You're listening to
The Bart Factor
with your host, Bart Robley.
All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Bart Robley, and you are listening to The Bart Factor. I've said this before, I don't know how much tuning in is involved because we're on YouTube here. There's not any frequencies we're dialing in or anything like that. Hey, so today I've got kind of a cool podcast, and got a great sponsorship for it. First of all, my website, drummerswag.com, but the one I'm really excited about is Aquarian Drumheads is now a proud sponsor of the Bart Factor, and Aquarian is my longest running endorsement. I've been with the company over 20 years, and I am sitting here at Aquarian with A&R rep extraordinaire Chris Brady. Hello, Chris.
Bart Robley, how are you doing, buddy?
I am doing fantastic.
Hey, I got a question for you. This is called the Bart Factor?
Yep.
We're not going to have to eat any weird food or get stung by some exotic ant somewhere in the Amazon, right? We're cool?
No,
Okay.
unless you have some weird animals or weird food here.
Yeah, no, I think we're safe.
I know you have cookies and candy.
We're not going to have to eat 20-year-old duck eggs or something?
If you want, man. Well, I'm game for anything.
Okay, that's good.
So, Chris, I've got a question for you. I've been with the company for a long time. I've been an endorser of the company for a long time. I've never asked you this. What is your exact title? Is it A&R rep? What is it?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, everybody here at Aquarian wears a lot of different hats, so we all kind of multitask and do many things. But yes, one of my chief duties is artist relations.
Very good. Very good. And I mean, you and I, we've talked about this before. It goes beyond just the Aquarian relationship. We're good friends and we hang out and stuff. And so anyway, I want to say thank you right off the bat for doing this with me today. And this is going to be great.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm flattered.
No, man, you bet. One of the things in the past that I've done in videos, and stuff like that are here on YouTube on my channel, I try to enlighten younger players and people on all different aspects of not just playing, but on the business as well, because I think that's maybe an area that sometimes gets overlooked by some drumming educators, and so that's what I try to do here. One of the things that I've talked about is endorsements and what they are and what they are not. And a lot of times I was just kind of giving my opinion on that. So that's why I wanted to talk to you today and get your opinion from the A&R rep, from your standpoint. So first of all, what is it that you would look for in a potential, person that Aquarian wants to work with and wants to endorse?
Oh boy, we could spend a lot of time just on that, but I'll try to be...
Well, that's why I asked it first.
I'll try to be brief. I mean, there's a lot of obvious things that you would probably run through your mind, but one of them would be just how we're going to interact with an artist. So, right. We try to be a pleasant, amicable company, and we try to deal with people that way, and that's the kind of relationship we want with the artist. We don't want any kind of friction or contentiousness going on. We want it to be a pleasant experience. We're looking for good guys and good gals, just good people to partner up with and have a relationship with. And then obviously, you're looking for artists that can play.
Right.
And by play, I don't mean chops. I mean serve the music. First and foremost, we're looking for, it's not about the amount of notes, we're looking for artists that can groove, have a great sense of time, understand a song. Even if that's prog instrumental fusion or whatever, still understand the song and play what's appropriate. And yeah, if there's chops on top of that, that's always great too.
Right.
But really, I think it's those two things. You're looking initially for, obviously, people that can play the instrument, and you're looking for good people, people that you're going to be able to work with and get along with. And then, obviously, you're looking for people, especially in this social media age, that are quote-unquote influencers. People that
Yeah, that's a
can
big-
motivate other people to get excited about your products, what you make, and then potentially take that excitement and mimic it and go out and maybe experiment with the gear, buy that gear, become a user of the Aquarian product or any product as well.
I think that's important, from an artist perspective. I mean, you got it. For me, anyway, before I ever approach a company, I use their gear. That's why I approach the company. I don't just, think, oh, wow, well, these guys are giving away free stuff, which we'll get to that in a minute. I mean, because that's a big, misnomer too with younger players. But one of the things you touched on a second ago that I've always really liked about Aquarian is kind of like the family vibe. Like you said, it's people that you want to work with, and it is pleasant. I always say that when I'm going over to Aquarian to pick up product, I've got to make sure that I have I got time. I come over here and it's a hang. You come over and it's not like running into
It's not like going through the fast food lane.
Right.
Give me my burger, let's go. No, there's always more involved than that.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, that's important. I think building that relationship is in the business is important, because it's I think that's the way it should be with everything, you should.
Well, that's just life.
Right, exactly.
That's not even, this extends beyond drumming and endorsements. That's just life. It's all about, building relationships and trying to get along with people and find some common ground, right? And things go a lot easier when you do.
Right, yeah. I agree with that 100%. Now, let me ask you this, and some of these questions, I already know the answer to, obviously, because we've talked about it a lot, but do you seek out artists, or do artists only seek you out? Or do you ever hey, I really like this guy, and I'm going to approach him?
We've never really done that. That's never been Roy's philosophy. I'm gonna channel a lot of Roy probably in this podcast and echo a lot of things that I've learned from him and that he said, and that's never been something that he's asked me to do or wanted us to do. So we're looking for people that want to play this stuff, and not to quote unquote go out headhunting other artists.
Right.
We want people to have had an interest or a desire to play the product and then approach us, because then I think it's more genuine, as opposed to seek somebody out and then potentially promise X, Y, and Z. Hey, there's going to be free gear, and there's going to be ads, and we're going to do this campaign, and well, yeah, sure, they might come over for that, right?
Right.
But we would rather have people either A, already playing the product, or B, at least interested enough in the product to start the conversation and to want to start the relationship going.
Right.
So no, I've never really sought anybody out, and I don't think Roy had either.
Yeah, and I don't. And again, it comes back to what I was saying a minute ago. For me, I always play anything that I endorse. I play that product in the first place, So I was always curious about that, So, well, you touched on this, and I said we'd touch on this too. So let's throw this out there for the younger listeners and people who are just seeking out endorsements. Talk about free gear. That's the one thing that everybody thinks. Oh yeah, because I've had people say that to me before.
Well, maybe we could two-prong this question answer.
Okay.
One thing would be, first off, seek out endorsements for gear that you already play and that you like. Don't try to go for what you think is going to be easy or what you think is the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
And will be the easy win. Mm-hmm. If it's Zildjian or Yamaha or Paiste or whatever, Meinl, be sure that you are already really playing that stuff and have a passion for it, and then seek that endorsement out.
Right.
Because then at that point, the free gear won't necessarily be some overriding obsession. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
I gotta get free gear.
Right.
Now, if you really dig the product, you're happy to start a relationship with a company.
Right.
And if they give you some accommodations on price or maybe a little sample gear here and there, that's a great place to start. And then you can build on that. But if you start out to shoot, hey, I got to have free gear, that's probably not a good way to go about it. And, obviously, if you're on, uber legendary status, if a Steve Gadd, a Neil Peart, Vinnie Colaiuta,
Right.
You're not going to, if those guys were to call up whatever company, you're not going to be like, oh, yeah, man.
I'll give you a cut of.
Yeah, we're going to give you a great price. I mean, that probably wouldn't happen. But yeah, play what you like and then seek out an endorsement from that. And then have realistic expectations out of the shoot. Be willing to start a relationship and build on it. And see what the company's going to do, and then how you can reciprocate. Because if you can prove that you're an influencer, and that you can really maybe motivate people to show interest in the product and maybe go out and buy it, then at that point you can have that conversation.
Right.
And because with the social media nowadays, that's a lot easier to prove your case, and for a company to verify, or for a company to do its homework and go, hey.
This cat has it together, and he knows or she knows what they're doing.
And then, maybe this is an upcoming question and I'm jumping the gun, but that leads into another thing, which is I'm going to channel Roy here, and that's put the music first.
Right.
Too many players are obsessed with the endorsement, and it's almost like the thrill of the hunt, It's this all-consuming, I got to have this endorsement, and they're constantly, I got to get this endorsement. But then when they get it, the thrill of the hunt's over, and it's like, well, now what?
Yeah, they go on to the next thing.
And they go on to the next thing, and also, now what? Because really, it probably hasn't changed their career one iota.
Right.
Right.
Roy
always says, a company can't make you famous, you have to do that. On your merits as an individual and your merits as a player.
That's one, and on those, along those lines, the thing that, the free gear and company making you famous and stuff, I've always been really thankful, honestly, for everything that Aquarian's ever done for me, and I mean, throughout the years, like with clinics and stuff, you guys have shown great support to me. And I was in an ad one time. I was in one of the True Bounce ads.
Yeah, the educator. Yeah.
I was always very thankful for that. I think, like you said, to the younger players out there, if you come into a relationship looking at it from the standpoint of what can you do for me, that's just the wrong way to do it.
You won't get far.
Yeah, you're not going to get far at all.
You'll end up being heartbroken at some point. It's not going to. It won't end well.
Right, and also I think one of the things that, and you can touch on this too. One of the things I really like about Aquarian and all my companies, but we're talking about Aquarian today, is that you guys have always been open to working with the artists on their ideas. An artist will approach you with an idea, I know I have, and either, yeah, that's great, let's do it, or no, it's not so good, it's not the right time. Talk to me about that. How often does that sort of stuff happen?
Well, I want to touch on the other thing just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
To dovetail. Another Royism would be, and I think we all know this, but we don't all really maybe absorb it and really know it, which is put the music first.
Yes.
Because that really is the golden rule. If you do that, then usually everything else will fall in place. So if you really put the music first, meaning you're thinking of the music and not the drums first, then chances are you're supporting the artists in the way they need to be, how they want to be supported when they're on stage, and you're going to be working. And if you're working and you're gigging a lot and you're serving the music, then probably at some point recognition will follow, and then the endorsements will follow, and everything then has a proper order and a proper sequence of events that makes sense.
Right. Success
so
is.
I just wanted to tie that into the
Yeah.
other thing.
And thank you for doing that. Totally. Success to me is something that follows in the wake of a lot of hard work. I mean, I tell that to all my drum students. I tell it to all my musician friends. And I actually, what you just said. I mean, I'm a big, I all the time I'm pointing to drummers, going, "Oh, that guy's one of my favorite players. Oh, he's one of my favorite players." So I think every drummer does that. But I always liked guys, talking about serving the music. I always liked Ringo. Ringo, that's what he did with the Beatles. He served the music, and look where it took him.
I think most great drummers that we like serve the music. I think that's a common thread.
Yeah, totally. The song has to come first. It really does. It really does. So anyway, on to the next question. Like with young endorsers or young players who are seeking out an endorsement, let's talk about the do's first. We'll talk about the don'ts in a minute, or maybe you can tie them together. What can young players out there that, okay, I've got all my playing together. I've been taking lessons. I've been working really hard. I'm in a couple of bands. I'm doing all these things, and I use Aquarian Drumheads or whatever. How do I approach you? What do you appreciate from somebody who is approaching you to endorse the product?
Well, we like enthusiasm, but I would say don't be too overzealous. And what I mean by that is if you place a call, if you send an email, don't 15 minutes later send an email saying, "Hey, did you get my email?" And then an hour after that, place a phone call going, "Hey, I sent you 2 emails and I haven't heard back yet," and only 2 hours have transpired.
Right.
So, you just... One thing I would say is just, again, this ties in everything we've been saying, is just let things occur to a degree and don't get too ramped up about it. So make your initial contact, and that might be via phone call or email, or maybe an artist that's already on the roster and they put in a good word for you, which is actually a great way to start a relationship. If somebody can vouch for you,
right,
that goes a long way. If it's an artist in good stead who hardly ever recommends people, and they go, "Hey, I got little Jimmy over here and he wants to be an artist," that's gonna help a lot, as opposed to just a cold,
right,
reaching out with no sort of heads up.
Right.
But
right.
I would say, and then, when you send that email, just make sure, construct a sentence. I get so many emails that just, there's not even a salutation. It's just, "How do I get endorsement?" And endorsement's spelled wrong. And they don't even sometimes put their name. They don't even say, So, "Dear Aquarian, dear sirs," however, do a salutation. Then state your case. "I've been using your product for X amount of years, and I'm a fan, and here's some links to my social media." And, then allow some time for a response. And it may take, everybody at all companies are super busy. They may be at trade shows, they may be traveling, they may be in marketing meetings, they may be up having a meeting with some store, and they're not in the office every day. So you have to maybe give it a week, within reason. Now, obviously, if a month goes by and you haven't heard, then
it's fine. Reach out again. Hey.
Reach out again. But even if it's been a week, give that person at the company maybe a little time to respond, because here at Aquarian, we're a much smaller company. We don't have a huge staff, and as we said earlier, we all wear a lot of different hats.
That's what I was just going to touch on. You're not just always sitting there at your computer, waiting for
Looking
emails to come in, or
Warren G and Nate Dogg Sesame Street
watching
remix.
Sesame Street videos or something.
Who would do that?
I don't know, man. I sit at his desk watching Sesame Street videos, eating cookies. I don't know, man.
That never goes on here at Aquarian.
But yeah, you get, where everybody's busy and everybody has, you have a work day and you have things you have to do, and I'm sure you allot a certain amount of time to, responding to emails. So yeah, that's always a good one. And I've always been surprised at how many times people, and I'm not even, in your position, but people will want to work with you or something, and it's the same thing. You get a text message, or you get a phone call, or you get an email, and it's like, well, how do you go about your day? You can't formulate a thought. That's
well, these things take time.
Right.
Maybe people have a perception once they start this process, within a week they're going to know if they get an endorsement. If you're traveling, if you have other projects going on, these things could take weeks, sometimes months before you iron it out. Yeah, we're going to bring you on board, and here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a quick process. So if you're getting ready to go out on tour in 2 weeks, and you're trying to get it all buttoned up before you go, and you're rushing the companies,
right?
That's you may have your schedule, but they have theirs, and theirs is probably going to override yours.
Exactly. Quick, send me out, a year's worth of drum heads, FedEx them out yesterday.
I need them by 3 days from now.
Yeah, and they're free, right?
Yeah.
By the way, they're free. All right, so products. So there's kind of some of the do's and the don'ts, right? And everything like that. So now let's go back to the products. The product itself, or let's go to the product itself, I should say. I play Aquarian, because I think they're the best drum heads in the world. I really do. And whenever I'm asked to play a backline kit and it doesn't have Aquarian, I'm always, surprised at the other products how they don't sound as good as Aquarian. With the products themselves, do you do any of the development yourself, or do you put any say-so into things, and do you have ideas, you throw them out there? How does that work? How does product development happen around here?
Yeah, sure. It's really everybody. You had started to ask this question earlier, until you were so rudely interrupted by me, about product development in relation to artists. And a lot of product is a result of a collaborative effort with artists. So our kick patch came about as a suggestion from you. We were at NAMM, you saw the Duradot, and you came to me and said, hey, that'd be cool if you just made it bigger. And then it could be in case you ever break your bass drum head. So that was your idea.
Well, and I got to give credit where credit's due, and I've told you this before. That was actually, we were playing a NAMM jam the night before, just down the street from the convention center. And I had a ton of drummers coming up and playing on my kit. There was probably 5 or 6 guys coming up. Some of them were real heavy hitters. Yeah. And my bass player goes, what are you going to do if you break a bass drum head? And I was like,
why would you bring that up now?
Why would you say that?
You just jinxed the whole thing, man.
Right. And so he was the one, there should be some sort of patch you put on the bass drum. And as soon as he said it, I was like, ding, that Duradot. And so the next day at NAMM, we were at a Mike Johnston clinic.
That's right.
We went over and
I think it was about endorsements.
It was about endorsements.
It was,
yeah. And we watched Mike and listened to him, and he's, always, a wellspring of knowledge, an amazing player. And anyway, I threw the idea at you, and you said, talk to Ron, and I talked to Ron, and here we are.
Yeah, and it didn't take. I mean, we all talked about it and was like, yeah. And so our new reflector heads were sort of a collaboration with the Eric Moore over a period of years, trying different things.
I didn't know.
And there's been a lot of product over the years that has arisen through artist requests or artist ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, we started doing the snare strip protectors that go underneath. We packaged those separately, and that was an idea of one of our artists, Ken Tondre. He was like, he loves those things. He goes, you got to just put those in a bag. And we're like, yeah, okay. Cool. And that became part of our drum kit tool line that has the Duradot and the kick patch and tone tabs and the T-tabs and all that stuff. But a lot of this stuff is artist-driven.
Right.
And but some of it's internal. I mean, like the Force 10 heads, I think, sort of came about via Roy and myself.
Okay.
And like the thin kick patches. That was one of my ideas.
I love those things,
because I've been using it on gigs myself.
Yeah, I love those.
just taking the dot. And when I was still doing top 40 and stuff, I was using those. And one day I went into Ron and Roy and said, hey, I've been using these, and I've been showing other artists, and they're loving the thinner version because they can either use it by itself or they could layer it to achieve their own thickness beater protector. Some guys will put 2 or 3 together to get that sound and feel and everything. And they said, great, we didn't know that, and let's package it.
You know what I use those for? I've used them the way they're meant to be used on my bass drum, but also before Aquarian came out with the super pads, I used to teach on kits that had mesh heads, right? Well, they wouldn't stick real well to mesh heads, but what I would do is I would take 2 of them, and I'd put one on the head, where the beater hits it.
Yeah.
And then I'd put one on the other side, and I would stick them to themselves.
Oh, there was enough space in the mesh that they could stick together.
It would go through the mesh, the glue or something, and I had one that stayed on there for well over a year.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's a great idea.
They work great, man.
That's another great idea.
There's another great idea. Package that one.
Hey, checks in the mail.
Exactly.
Mailbox money.
Exactly. No, that's great, man. That's great. And I think, to me, I think that's important as an artist to be able, and it you know what? It kind of comes full circle. It comes back to what we were saying about not only the relationship, but, when you come over to Aquarian, have time and hang and get to know people, because you never know. You got an idea, and it's like, hey, I want to throw this at you. And I think it's important as an artist perspective to be able to do that. It makes you feel like, wow, I'm really part of something.
Yeah, I mean, not every idea is a gem, and
no,
but we're always open to hearing an idea or listening. That doesn't mean we're going to always be able to do it or act on it, but there's no harm in having the conversation.
Oh,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And I think that's great. And you said something a minute ago when you said, when I was playing top 40. So those guys out there that do know Chris or even don't know Chris is a great drummer too and great player. And so that's something that I think that most A&R guys are, they're in the business and they play. And so you see from a player's perspective as well what the artist would want.
Phil.
Yeah, you bet, man.
Bacon. Roy, here's another Royism. Roy always says it's almost imperative if you're going to be a drum company to have some mix of drummers working there.
Right.
So obviously Roy is an amazing drummer. I play drums. Jamie Harris that works here, he's in charge of inside sales. He's a drummer. He's played drums forever. And that helps.
Yeah.
You have to have people that maybe are have formal training in business, but you have to pepper that with actual musicians too. There has to be a happy medium.
Right, yeah.
Otherwise you're making things that really don't serve the artist.
Right.
And that's part of our thing here at Aquarian is we make, products to help drummers make music, to play better,
and
to make their job easier.
Right, and it comes back to, again, serving the song, serving
It's
the music.
serving the music, man. That's the golden rule. If you just worry about playing the music, not even worry about playing the drums. The drums is a vehicle to be part of the music. If you're worried about playing the music, then generally all this other stuff will fall in line at some point eventually.
Right.
And you have to be patient, but it'll be the right sequence of events where it all makes sense and it'll kick in. Sometimes it takes years.
Yeah, it does.
It's not an overnight thing always.
Well, and I mean, just playing the instrument isn't an overnight thing. I tell my students all the time, I cannot go into my kitchen and make you a magic drumming milkshake and say, here, drink this, and suddenly you're a drummer. I mean, I've been doing this my whole life, and I play drums every day, and it's incredibly challenging to me, and it's something that I find incredible joy with, but it's also, there's that challenge, there's that.
Well, as you get older, you learn to love the process.
Yes.
I think I read in a Steve Smith article somewhere, I think it was him, he talked about that. You get to a point where it's not getting to the top of the mountain that's even fun. It's like the thing we're talking about endorsements. Once you get it, it's like, well, now what?
Yeah, right.
Well, sort of like it's that Sisyphus thing, rolling the rock up the hill and then having to keep doing it. But part of the thing isn't getting up the hill. Once you're there and planting your flag, you have to learn the journey is really the fun part.
Right.
And then the great things that happen along the way, but then the journey never really stops, right? You never really achieve. When do you ever achieve? Okay, I'm at the pinnacle now. I'm going to just coast from here.
Right.
What great musician has that ever happened with? None.
Right.
Every guy drummer we love or any musician's always pushing themselves in some way. They're never stopping.
Well, that's you just mentioned Steve Smith. I mean, probably arguably some of the best drumming in top 40 music ever recorded, in top 40 rock music, and that guy, I mean, his practice regime and what he does to get where he's at is just legendary.
All those guys,
Yeah.
Vinny Weckel, Steve Smith, I mean, they're not letting off the gas pedal.
No.
They're still practicing like they were 5 years into it or something.
Right.
They get, like I just saw the thing with Vinny where he was talking about, and it was so cool. He's talking about when he was learning, just starting, and he goes, he loved it all.
Yeah.
Because we've all taught. Again, they want to get to point A to point B and not do the work in between. You got to love the journey.
Yeah.
And Vinny was like, he goes, I loved it all. He goes, didn't matter if I just was on a pad reading at a, Podemski's or Louis Bellson rhythm book or whatever. He goes, I got as much juice and enjoyment out of that as getting on the kit and then trying to play a beat. It didn't matter.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, this rhythm reading is drudgery. I can't wait till I can get on the drum set and play something.
No.
It was all equal fun and goodness.
That's great, man. And I think that's a good way to approach learning anything. You've got to do this because you love it. I mean, and I think it's that way with anything in life. Our thing happens to be drums and drummers and stuff like that, But I think anything you do in life, you've got to just really be passionate about it, And I think, we mentioned Mike Johnston a minute ago. I mean, that's one of the things he talks about all the time is just, the passion and how much he loves teaching, and how much he puts into his teaching, and how much he loves that. Now let's let that segue into this real quick, and then and maybe we'll wrap it up. Talk to me a little bit about the education side of things with Aquarian, because education's a big deal in music, and Roy is he was one of the first. He was the first drummer to be employed by Rogers Drums and do clinics. Talk to me about the education side of things with Aquarian.
Well, I think it's pretty easy to tie Aquarian into education strictly because of Roy. We've always been, into education and educators and trying to help and promote them, more so lately. But, that all comes from Roy because, he's the pioneer.
He really is.
He set the stage for the way modern drum clinics are done and how they're handled. And you ask everybody, and I don't care if it's Gad or Vinny or Weckel or all these guys, they're going to tell you, man, one of the very first drum clinics, or the first drum clinic I ever saw was a Roy Burns drum clinic.
Yeah.
Because nobody was really doing it at that level where it was a thing, like a clinic tour. He was the first guy. And then, of course, all his books, the One Surface Learning, the Intermediate Drum Method, Bart and I are looking at a wall that has a poster, and the poster has all Roy's books, the Burns, the Lou Malin finger technique, and all that stuff. And then, of course, being a staff artist and clinician and product developer for Rogers.
Yeah.
And then all those great articles he wrote for Modern Drummer, the concept articles, which are, again, those aren't really even about drumming. And Roy would get comments from business people or sports people like, man, I read those things because they're applicable to anything you do in life. Just take out drums and insert something else in those articles. And they're just good common sense ways to approach stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, right. Education is, super big with us, and of course we have educators like yourself and Stephen Taylor out in Nashville and Mike Johnston, and there's tons of others, and I apologize that I'm not naming everybody, but yeah, we're very heavily in education because that's the future. I know that sounds
Right.
kind of
cheesy,
cliche, but I mean, really, we need more musicians, more drummers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that education is such a big deal because it's an old art form. I mean, if you look at the rudiments themselves. The rudiments some of them are hundreds of years old. They were used by generals to communicate on the battlefield. If somebody's not out there passing this stuff along, if somebody's not doing it, who's going to do it?
Regulators, mount up!
I knew it was coming.
I was going to work that in somewhere.
I knew it was coming. I threw you a softball there, man.
No, I think maybe I'm starting to sound like that old man, like you sound like your parents, but especially in this day and age, and I've heard Roy say this too, never before has there been such a wealth of information about music and drumming that is literally so easy to attain, yet in a weird sort of way a lot of people get it and grasp it and are soaking the knowledge up like a sponge. But then a lot of them aren't, and it's kind of stunning in a way, because you talk to a lot of young players, and it's all out there. It's not hidden. And you start talking about the greats of our era. I'm not even talking about going back, to, Davy Tuff and Sid Catlett. I'm not even that.
Right,
I'm just talking
right.
about, the Gads and all that stuff. And a lot of these players are like, you start mentioning these guys in these albums, they're like, huh? What?
That always is surprising to me when I have a friend or an acquaintance and you start talking about drummers, or like, I always say, I'm geeking out on drums. You talk about, we could sit here for hours and probably talk about the kit that Ringo played, or the sizes of the drums that John Bonham used, or,
Or the beats or the grooves.
The beats,
iconic,
exactly, yeah. All this stuff and how it's put together. And when I have a friend that's like a drummer, as a player, and they're like, "Wow, I didn't know that." And it's not even an education thing. It's kind of like the light bulb never came on.
Well, it's not even like a snob thing. You're just kind of shocked.
Right.
Like you teach a lot, and I teach every now and then, and you ask young kids, like, who are your favorite drummers? And they look at you like they can't even name one hardly. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
When I was that age, I could rattle off 30 drummers.
Right.
That in albums and stuff. Oh, I'm in the blah, blah, blah. And they can barely name one or two. And with the wealth of information, it is kind of mind-blowing. So we definitely need, to bring it back to education, we still need to educate and sort of guide these young students, or not even young, just any student of any age, because the internet's the Wild West. And
completely.
They still need a roadmap.
Yeah. Well, and then I want to tie it in with this too. I think that no matter, it goes back to what we were saying, how you're always learning and how you're always getting better and always trying to be a better player. You and I talked about this the other day when I was over at your house. I'm always trying to do that. And one of the things that I do is I always have a lot of stuff I have to do, right? Like for the band, I've got a million songs I got to either play live, or I've got a recording session, or whatever. I got stuff going on. But I always try to have 5 or 10 tunes that are like drum classic tunes, but I've just never learned, right? It's like I just never learned that tune. And I hate to admit this, but I had never played 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Never done it, right? And so a few months ago...
Get out of my sight.
I know. How dare you?
Yeah. How dare you, sir?
I sat down at the beginning of the year, and I do this every year. I'm a firm believer in at the beginning of the year, not so much New Year's resolutions, because I think those go by the wayside, but setting goals, right? So I will always pick 5 tunes or 10 tunes that, hey, I'm going to learn these tunes this year. And 50 Ways was one of them. And I've been working on that, since January.
Yeah.
And it's I'm very much enjoying the process and of learning and stuff like that. So I think you're always going to be learning. You're always going to be getting better. And then in turn, passing that on to the students. And it just makes you a better educator, makes you a better player, makes you better at everything, you know. And again, that is a Roy thing, you know, for me too, you know.
Well, most of our favorite players, sometimes you're a specialist, which is great. But most of the guys that we like, you and I, they're very versed in a lot of different things.
Right.
And they bring that all to bear on any given musical situation.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a little jazz, a little Latin, a little funk, a little rock, whatever, right? And maybe they're not super expert at everything, but everything that they play in those genres, they play super believably and super well.
And they sell it.
And it's believable, and then all that stuff goes into the melting pot, right?
Right.
It all gets, and that's how you get your individuality too. You know, by copying people, you and I could copy the exact same drummers, yet you and I are not going to sound the same, because what I pull out of it and what you pull out of it will still be different. Even if we're listening the exact same stuff, there's no way. But that's how you nobody creates from a vacuum. That's how you get your identity.
Right. Well, we've talked about that too, like, you know, trying to play with, you know, what another drummer played through the tribute thing, you know, because I played in the Turn the Page show with Sam Morrison Band, and no matter how close I come, I work on those songs all the time. We've been doing that show for years. And I'll still sit down with a list of tunes. Okay, I'm going to go through these 5 tunes, make sure I'm still on point with them. And every time you sit down and play, it's like, oh wow, I never quite heard that, you know. And you're always kind of growing, I think, and evolving and stuff like that. So, all right, well, let's wrap it up with this. What's new with Aquarian? What's new going on? You got any new products? You got any new things happening that you want to talk about? What's going on?
Well, there's nothing super duper new. I mean, the latest thing that we launched was the reflector heads. That's the collaboration with Eric Moore, and that has been really well received and super successful. I think people are really enjoying that drum head. I think at some point this year, hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to have cymbal pads for the super pad system.
Oh, great!
So we've been showing that at NAMM. We had it at NAMM, but I think we're finally going to get that out. But that's really it for right now. I don't know.
And I got to say, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you gave me a set of those a few months ago to try out and see if I liked them.
Yeah, you were sort of prototyping.
And I love them, and you know, because you don't wear through them. I mean, you know, the other ones that I've used in the past, I mean, they'll be on there for 3 or 4 months, and there's a big old hole. You gave these to me at the end of last year.
They're still cool.
Oh, dude, they're brand new, and I play on them again every day.
Well, that's because they have that proprietary kick pad material in there, so that has the longevity, durability thing, but it also adds a little sound and stick response to it, so that they feel good to play.
They feel great.
I mean, even we had Joe LaBarba. We just did a video with him at Pro Drum Shop, which was amazing, and he played them at NAMM, and he loved them because he could play all those really up-tempo, quiet bebop things and still get some stick rebound.
Right. Yeah.
So, they're cool. They're cool for any genre or any player.
Yeah, they really are. I really dig them. So, well, that's great. And then, you know what? Actually, I said that's how I was going to wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up with this because we've been talking about Roy and channeling Roy and stuff. You saw this. I put it up on Facebook a couple weeks ago. I was up in L.A. and I went to Pro Drum, and I took a picture of
the bass drum head.
Yeah, Roy Burns Rogers bass drum head. And I put it up on Facebook and on Instagram, and I put a little thing. I don't remember exactly what I said. If you want to go back and find it and read it, you can. But you know, Roy really has done it all. I mean, he's played with the biggest artists of his time. He's recorded, you know, on great records. He's done live television. He has been an educator. He has been a clinician. He has been a product developer, and he is, one of the founders.
Manufacturer, businessman.
Yeah. I mean, he's done it all, and so I'm going to end it with that to Roy Burns and everybody here at Aquarian Drumheads. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, man. It's always, again, at the beginning of the podcast, I said it kind of goes beyond just the artist. Company relationship with us because we're friends, but thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. And everybody, there you have it. My interview with Chris Brady from Aquarian Drumheads for the Bart Factor. Be sure to check out Aquarian Drumheads. Their website is
aquariandrumheads.com.
There you go. And you can find them on
Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and the YouTubes and all that good stuff.
All that sort of good stuff.
And our website.
Yeah, and check out my website, drummerswag.com. Buy yourself a T-shirt and some of my educational stuff.
Those T-shirts are dope.
And that's, see, it comes right from the man himself. And you know what? I'm going to give, and this is finally how I'm going to sign off. If you want to get an endorsement with Aquarian Drumheads and you come talk to Chris Brady, bring him some cookies.
You got to go through Bart first. Good luck with that. Bart's like 6'4".
I'm 6'5".
240 pounds of all mean, lean muscle.
I wish. All right, thanks, Chris. I'll see you guys.
Bart.
You bet. We'll
Bye,
see you guys
everyone.
in the next episode of the Bart Factor. Thanks for listening.